I'm from England, but I live in Canada, and I love it. It's a very big place with a history that spans back thousands of years. From the cities and towns that hug the American border to the frozen wastelands that touch the Arctic, Canada has produced many unique stories. Some of them are very scary. Today's video is the top 10 scary Canadian urban legends. Starting off at number 10 now, we have Cressy. Cressy is said to be a mysterious, eel-like creature that lurks in the waters of Crescent Lake in Newfoundland and Labrador. Stories of Cressy date back to native Canadian legends, which refer to it as the pond devil or swimming demon. Their fears were also held by European settlers who arrived at the lake during the early 20th century. Since then, there have been dozens of sightings of Cressy, with one report saying it could be as much as 15 feet long. Next up at number 9 now, we have the St. Louis Ghost Train. In the town of St. Louis in Saskatchewan lies the village of St. Louis. There, you can find an old abandoned train track. Now, many of the locals there have reported seeing strange floating lights moving along the train track during the night. Others have said that a ghost train will appear on the track looking just like the ones from the 19th century. Another story is that the ghost of a workman who died during the track's construction will appear at night. At number 8 now, we have the Forbidden Plateau. This plateau in Western Canada has long been regarded as a mysterious place. The native Canadians would hide their families in the forested plateau during wars with other tribes. One day, the warriors returned to find their family had disappeared. They believe that evil spirits took them away, and they vowed to never step foot there again, earning it the name of the Forbidden Plateau. Many people have taken this story to heart and stay clear of the eerie presence there. Next up at number 7 now, we have Young Teaser. This was an American ship that was destroyed in the War of 1812. It was wrecked in Nova Scotia, where some people believe its ghost can still be seen today. People swear they have seen the Teaser light, a fiery glow of a flaming ship near the site of the explosion. Accounts began in the late 19th century, and since then many people have said that the ship appears on the 27th of June, the day it sank. Others have gone even further and said the ship also holds the ghosts of the sailors who died in the explosion, forced to relive their deaths forever. At number 6 now, we have Christie Mansion. It's now Regis College in Toronto, but Christie Mansion used to be the home of William Mellis Christie, a successful businessman in the city. His son Robert inherited the mansion and set up a secret chamber for his mistress. She lived there for many years until Robert's affections for her began to wane. Eventually, she was said to have hung herself in room 29. Ever since then, people have said the room is cursed. Legend says that if you enter room 29 by yourself at night, the door will swing shut by itself and you'll be trapped there forever, just like the ghost of the mistress. Moving on to number 5 now, we have Peggy's Cove. On a rocky outcrop in Nova Scotia, you can find a lonely lighthouse. The story goes that in 1800, a woman named Peggy washed up on the rocks there after being shipwrecked. Tragically, her children all drowned. Peggy went on to marry one of the locals and lived on that cove. She would often walk along the rocks at night, calling out to them in her grief. One night, her husband went out with her and danced on the rocks with her to cheer her up. He lost his footing though and slipped, sending him into the rocks, which killed him. Soon after, in absolute grief, she jumped off the same rocks and ended her life. Visitors swear that on a dark, stormy night, you can see the ghost of a woman in a blue dress standing at the edge of the rocks, ready to jump. Next up at number 4 now, we have John Troyer. By all accounts, he might be the closest thing Canada has to a witch hunter. He was born into an Amish family in America before relocating to Ontario in Canada. He was a doctor who was terrified of witches. Legend says that he would stalk witches in the woods there until they led him to their den. He would then steal their broomsticks for personal transport. He would also set up actual witch traps to capture them. Now, whether or not you believe the whole broomstick or witches thing, there is evidence of John Troyer's traps, which are essentially human-sized bear traps. Coming at number 3 now, we have the Dungarvan Whooper. This is a famous ghost story coming from New Brunswick and dating back to the late 19th century. According to legend, a young Irish cook called Ryan worked at a lumberjack camp. While the other lumberjacks were out one day, the boss killed Ryan. When they returned, he told them Ryan just got sick and died suddenly. They buried him some distance from the camp. However, a loud whooping sound kept them awake. The whooping got so loud that they fled the camp, convinced it was Ryan's vengeful ghost. In the years since then, many people have reported the whooping sound that can be heard in the woods as Ryan seeks vengeance on the living. Next up at number 2 now, we have the legend of Rose La Tulipe. This is a French-Canadian legend that dates back to the 18th century. There are more than 200 different versions of the legend, but they mostly share the same theme. Rose La Tulipe was a young girl who loved to dance. On the night of Mardi Gras, a stranger appeared at her house and danced with her until midnight. At that moment, he was revealed to be the devil. She tried tried to escape, but it was too late. The devil took Rose back to hell, where she remains to this day, dancing with her at his whim. And finally, number 1 now, we have Oak Island. Legend says that treasure can be found on Oak Island in Nova Scotia. Since the 19th century, people have been convinced the treasure there includes the likes of Marie Antoinette's jewels and even missing Shakespeare manuscripts. A number of people have died trying to search for this treasure. The legend all began with the discovery of a large pit which seems to be man-made. It's almost 200 feet deep at one point and has been protected by booby traps which have killed a number of explorers. There are even underground channels that lead to the beach over 500 feet away. Treasure hunters are convinced that all of this must have been built to hide treasure from hunters hundreds of years ago. Alright guys, well that's another video for our Urban Legends series. What country would you like to see me do next? Thank you as always for watching. My name is Danny Burke and I will see you all in the next video. Welcome back everyone. I thought I'd return to Canada for our latest Urban Legends video. Canada is the second biggest country on Earth. That is a lot of land. There's a lot of land for some creepy, mysterious and unexplainable things to happen in. There was no way I was going to be able to fit all of them into one single video, so I'm back today with this. My name is Danny Burke and this is the top 10 scary Canadian urban legends part 2. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the tunnel monster of Cabbagetown. In August 1978, a man called Ernest had a run-in with a very strange creature in Toronto. He and his wife were raising kittens at the time and one of them escaped. While he was looking for the kitten, he stumbled into a nearby cave and he saw, in his own words, a living nightmare I'll never forget. Ernest described the monster as long and thin, almost like a monkey, 3 feet long, large teeth, weighing maybe 30 pounds with slate grey fur. He also said its eyes were orange and red and slanted. Before he even had time to process what was actually in front of him, the creature spoke to him. It said, "Go away, go away," in a sort of hissing voice. Then it scurried off down a long tunnel. Ernest was done at that point. He got out of there as fast as he could, shaking with fear. He never approached the media with his story. He was afraid people would think that he was drunk or even crazy. His story only reached the media when people began to leak it to the local newspaper. He only agreed to talk to them if his last name was hidden. The article contained this artist's rendition of the creature. It does look humanoid in nature, but also kind of out of proportion, as if it had been deformed by its years scuttling around in the Toronto sewers. Ever since then, people have reported seeing this tunnel monster still lurking down there in the shadows. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the alien base. In 2017, media outlets started reporting sightings of strange lights hovering over Lake Ontario. Within a few days, people were convinced this was proof of alien activity there. Conspiracy theorists believe that there is an alien base which causes these strange light patterns. These orbs of light have been seen flying in the general direction of a local power plant. Is there anything behind that? Perhaps. The story ended up reaching such a climax that the government was forced to issue a statement. They said that the Canadian Armed Forces were actually conducting training operations in the area, and those exercises may have caused this visual phenomenon. Of course, this has done little to quieten down the conspiracy theorists, who are now more certain than ever of the alien base beneath the lake. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the lemon mine. Ever since the 1870s, people in Alberta have talked about the lemon mine, a rich gold mine that is somewhere out there in the Alberta Rockies. Nobody has been able to find it, but a geologist called Ron Stewart once claimed that he actually had. Skeptics always say there's no proof of the mine ever existing at all. According to legend, the mine was first discovered in 1870 when two prospectors, Frank Jack and Black Jack, stumbled across more gold in a cave than they had ever seen in their lives. Once their joy had subsided though, the men began to argue. They couldn't agree on whether to stay put at the mine or return to it in the spring. The argument escalated, and in a rage, Lemon grabbed an axe and murdered Blackjack as he slept. He was then consumed by guilt and wandered out into the hills, never able to find the mine again. Ever since then, nobody else has, and the only clues seem to lie in this murderous story. Coming in at the number 7 spot now, we have Gibraltar Point Lighthouse. This is the oldest remaining lighthouse on the Great Lakes and the second oldest in Canada. It was built in 1808 and guided ships for 150 years before being decommissioned in 1958. The first lighthouse keeper was a man called J.P. Raidmuller. He disappeared under mysterious circumstances on January 2nd, 1815. Now legend says that he was actually murdered by two soldiers who had been enjoying his home brew a bit too much. The killers dismembered him and buried his body in a few graves near the lighthouse. The brutal death and lack of justice is said to have made this man into a ghost. The story seems like many other ghost stories, but it does seem to have a little bit of physical evidence tied to it, apparently. One former lighthouse keeper did report digging up a coffin in the area that I described before. He found a small coffin. Inside this small coffin was a single human jawbone. Pretty grisly. Coming at number 6 now, we have the Nana Bozo. This is an old story from Canadian folklore that originates from the Ojibwe tribe. The legend goes that long ago, a beautiful woman lived on the moon and watched over the earth. She was loved by all the people except two women who were very jealous of her. So one night, they pushed her off the moon. The woman fell off the moon and fell into a lake. There, the local tribe greeted her and built her a wigwam. Eventually, they would come to her for advice. They named her Nokomis, and after a very long time, the woman fell pregnant. She gave birth to a daughter, Winona. When the daughter grew up, she was courted by many of the braves and the surrounding tribes, but she denied all of them. One day, Winona was walking in the forest when the wind decided that he wanted to steal her, so the wind swept her up and took her way out west to put her in a shack. Nokomis was devastated and tried to use all sorts of magic to bring her daughter back, but nothing worked. An eagle came down and told her what the wind had done to her daughter and said that the wind beat Winona. The tale continues for quite a while and follows Nokomis and her attempts to bring her daughter back, fighting through the elements and brutal tragedy. It's a legend that really has stood the test of time. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the Lady in Red. The Lower Bay subway station in Toronto is famous among paranormal investigators. Many people have claimed that it's haunted, specifically by the Lady in Red. People say she has black holes for eyes. Her legs are nowhere to be seen as she just floats along the railway tracks. Even subway workers have reported seeing the Lady in Red. Some have said they experience unusually cold drafts blowing down the tracks in areas where cold drafts should be physically impossible. Of course, the next question is, who is the Lady in Red? Well, some believe that she was a woman who either jumped or was even pushed into the tracks when a train came by one day. Some of the subway staff believe that her ghost came to reside in the old pump room in the station and that she uses that as her base to head out and haunt the tracks. Despite the many stories about the Lady in Red, nobody has ever reported making actual contact with her and hearing the story from the horse's mouth. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the Sasquatch. I was surprised I didn't mention this one in the first video, but oh well, here we are now. The Sasquatch is said to be a large ape-like creature that lives along the west coast of British Columbia and also in northern California. It's often described as a bipedal creature, 2.75 meters in height and 360 kilograms in weight. They're covered in long dark hair and leave large 50-centimeter footprints that amount to most of the proof provided by believers. The sightings are not a recent thing either. Going way back to 1884, there was actually an article that described the capture of a half-man, half-beast near Yale, British Columbia. The people who found the creature described it as something of a gorilla type that also resembled a human covered in thick, glossy black hair. The creature was said to be found unconscious on some railway tracks. When it awoke, it was chased away by a group of men. In the years since then, evidence for the Sasquatch has amounted to first-hand accounts, some tracks and bits of fur left behind on trees. Not enough for scientific confirmation, but enough to keep the legend alive. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Soldier's Tower. Students at the University of Toronto are well aware, I'm sure, of the many ghost tales that surround the almost 200-year-old establishment. One of the most famous is perhaps the Soldier's Tower. It's a memorial to the fallen Canadian soldiers of World War I. However, the bell tower is also known for a very grisly tale. Legend says that in the 1930s, a worker went up there to polish the bells at the very top of the tower. In a freak accident, he fell to his tragic death on the sidewalk directly under the tower. In the years since then, people claim they have seen the man's ghost repeat this tragedy over and over again, spiraling down and landing on the pavement before disappearing. I've saved the most disturbing part of this story till the very end. Some witnesses have described this apparition as having the flesh and blood of an actual human being before disappearing into the ground. I don't know why, but like a fleshy, bloody ghost is about 5 times scarier than a normal one. Gross. Moving on to number 2 now, we have the ROM. The Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto is over 100 years old and full of fascinating artifacts. Among the many ghostly inhabitants, 2 are always talked about. One of them is called Charles Trick Curley. He was the original director of the museum. People say they've seen him wearing a nightshirt and wandering through the East Asiatic collection. Some have reported strange occurrences in this gallery and have even seen the director himself. Why is he there? Does he have some sort of unfinished work perhaps? It has to be something very serious to actually haunt your own place of work for eternity. The other ghost is said to be of a little girl called Celeste. Staff and visitors alike have reported seeing her tiny apparition sitting in the McLaughlin Planetarium watching the shows. The planetarium has now been closed for years since the last sightings, and nobody is quite sure if she still wanders among the seats there, waiting for one final show. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Bashful Monster. That's the sort of nickname given to this creature that some say is like the Canadian cousin of the Loch Ness Monster. For over a century, locals at Okanagan Lake in British Columbia have talked about a monster that they simply refer to as Ogo Pogo. There have been over 1,000 sightings. The Native Americans in the area often speak of the monster. They refer to it as Nataka, or the Lake Devil. According to their legend, when they arrived in the area, they had to try and distract the fearsome monster by throwing a small animal into the lake so that they could cross it. Descriptions of the creature are varied, but some people have said it looks like a frog from the front and a dinosaur from the back. Now, if you're struggling to mentally picture that, don't worry, I think everyone is. Only the people who have seen the Ogo Pogo will ever know what it truly looks like. And that is that, guys, at least for now. It has been quite a while since I've done an Urban Legends videos. I know we used to do like, I don't know, 15 a week or something crazy, and we've kind of cooled it off, but I thought this would be a good one to return to. Do you want us to get back on top of that? Do you have any other series that we've been doing recently that you want to see more of? Whatever it is, let me know. You know I am always ears. Thanks as always for watching, guys. My name is Danny Burke, and I will see you all in the next one.
Hello and welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and today we're talking about my adopted home, Toronto, the North, the Six, home of the Blue Jays, the Maple Leafs, the CN Tower, Smokes Poutine, The Weeknd, and Drake. Yes, Champagne Pappy himself. Not only is Toronto the home of all of these gems, it's also the home to a wealth of urban legends. Stay tuned as I bring you the top 10 Toronto urban legends. Before we roll into this video, I want to hear what city you're from, or whether or not your home has some creepy legends going on of its very own. Also, if you want to hit that thumbs up button, we would really enjoy that. Also, if you guys want to connect with me on social media, my links are in the description box down below. You might even see some good pictures of Toronto there. Coming in at number 10, we have the ghost of Old Finch Road. Ah, the Old Finch Road. This road divides residential Scarborough and the forest, already very spooky, and it's located near the Toronto Zoo. According to frequenters of the road, a girl named Sue or Susie died near a bridge on the Old Finch Road on her birthday. Bad luck for Susie. People often go to the stretch and sing happy birthday in order to provoke the ghost of Susie, who's said to cry or shriek when she hears the song. The legend is supported by local graffiti in the area. The words happy birthday are spray painted onto a nearby rock. Local newspapers don't seem to reflect any girl named Susie being killed on her birthday in the area, but the location has been a hotspot for crime over the years. Despite the lack of archive evidence, anyone who frequents the area will tell you about the crazy moans and screams they hear along the road at night. However, there may be a logical explanation: the proximity to the zoo. When agitated, the fowl have been known to emit a foul noise. Is the ghost of Susie just a particularly angry peacock? Toronto has its very own Nessie at number 9. We have the Serpent of Lake Ontario. Is there a snake in the lake? Maybe. This is possible according to legend anyway. Back when Toronto was called York and Canada wasn't called Canada, settlers noticed something going on in Lake Ontario. Sure enough, they consulted the Seneca and legend told of a huge beast. This beast was called Gastian Dether and was said to live at the depths of the lake. According to the Seneca, the serpent could shoot fire from its mouth. As the 1800s progressed and the city eventually became Toronto developed, more reports of a huge 30-foot snake in the lake just kept on surfacing. It seems old Snakey in the Lakey liked to swim. He was also spotted in Kingston, Ontario, leading to popular legends of Kinksty. Many cryptozoologists think the lake monster could be some kind of old dinosaur, a large long-necked marine reptile. The last time someone spotted old Snaky Gassy was in the late 1960s. Is he still out there? Coming into number 8, we have the mystery of the whale bones. The whale bones of Lake Ontario have caused a lot of mystery and debate and sparked their own urban legends. Basically, in 1987, construction on the harbourfront streetcar terminal began, and an 11,000-year-old whale vertebrae was unearthed. This led to many considering the possibility that whales had swum in Lake Ontario, although geologists, zoologists, and scientists alike didn't think that happened. If they didn't though, how did the bones come to be in that area by the lake? Some think they came from an old exhibited whale carcass at the Fairmont Royal York Hotel. When the whale became too degraded to show, portions were disposed of in the lake. Now, DNA testing on the bone may lend credence to this theory. The bone turned out to be just a few hundred years old, not thousands. Its placement in the lake, however, is still up for debate and a cause of great mystery. Coming into number 7, we have the ghosts of Casa Loma. Ghosts just love haunting a castle, don't they? Casa Loma is a relatively new castle built in 1914 as a Gothic revival mansion by Sir Henry Pellet. The castle-style mansion is said to be haunted by a number of ghosts, firstly by Mr. and Mrs. Pellet themselves, the original owners, who were turfed out when they could no longer afford the upkeep. The most cited ghost, however, is a lady in white. She's been spotted all over the building. The White Lady is someone we believe to have been a maid who worked in the castle in its early days of operation. Now, this was around the time when Toronto was plagued with an influenza that killed 60,000 people. Casa Loma is frequently visited by ghost tourists and puts on a banging Halloween spooky house event. Gotta go there. Coming into number 6, we have the tunnel monsters of Cabbagetown. Cabbagetown is a pretty cool area slightly east of downtown Toronto. You can get a good curry near Cabbagetown, although there might be more than this neighbourhood of the six than meets the eye. In March 1979, 51-year-old Ernest was looking for his lost cat along his Parliament Street neighbourhood. His search led him to a tunnel opening. Now, as he wiggled in the tunnel, flashlight in hand, he saw something that truly tested his beliefs. His light illuminated a furry, monkey-looking creature with orangey red eyes and large teeth. He described the thing as being 3 feet tall with the ability to speak. The creature hissed and told him to go away before it ran off down a tunnel. Ernest then spoke to a journalist at The Sun and said the entrance of the tunnel was in a sewage system that runs under the subway. Being a big local news publication, a lot of people read the article and were very intrigued by the sound of the tunnel monster. Many people even went out to look for it. Now, despite the press coverage, nobody's ever managed to spot the creature. That being said, the description of the Cabbagetown monster is similar to that of the Memagwesi, a small water spirit according to Algonquin mythology. Could Ernest have been seeing one of those critters, and do they still live in the sewers of the city? Coming into number 5, we have the Toronto aerial jellyfish. There might be something going on in the skies of Toronto. In 2012, atmospheric jellyfish were spotted hovering over the city. Now, atmospheric jellyfish are UFO sensations and have been spotted before in China, the Netherlands, Norway, and recently in Toronto, Canada. An eyewitness reported the sighting. They said, "The thing came down from above the clouds slowly, descending for about a minute before I began filming. The details are actually kind of sketchy, but I don't know, maybe he did see something." Canada's best documented UFO sighting was over a lake in Nova Scotia in the 1960s. Coming into number 4, we have the cookie ghost of Christie Mansion. The Christie family were well known in Toronto, with Christie Street named after biscuit maker William Mellis Christie. He was a self-made entrepreneur who revolutionized the Canadian biscuit industry. When he died, he left his cookie business and his assets to his son, who took up residence in the family mansion, the Christie Mansion near Queen's Park. It seems that Christie Jr. Robert Christie had a mistress as well as his wife. He had her hauled up in a secret room of his mansion. Now, this room was room 29 according to legend. She had a butler and a maid to bring her food and tidy up after her, and Robert would come to her at night for their illicit rendezvous. Eventually, his interest in the woman started to wane and she could no longer stand being held prisoner waiting for him to come. She hung herself using her bed sheets and her body was secretly removed and buried in Queen's Park. Legend has it, her Her spirit stayed in room 29, and if anyone finds themselves alone in the room at night, the door swings shut and locks itself and you can't get out, just like she couldn't get out when Robert left her. They say that you will be stuck there until the morning. Coming into number 3, we have the Ghoul of Gibraltar Point Lighthouse. I love this lighthouse on the island. The Toronto Island is pretty much my favourite thing about the entire city, and Danny and I went with a bunch of our friends recently and he badly sunburnt his nose, so the legends about needing sun lotion when you're a pale white Irishman are true. Are the legends of the Gibraltar Point Lighthouse true though? The lighthouse on the island is one of the oldest buildings in Toronto and the second oldest lighthouse in all of Canada. It was built in 1808 and guided ships into the Toronto harbour on Lake Ontario. The story goes that a lighthouse watchman was murdered there and his ghost still haunts the tower to this day. The first keeper, Raid Muller, disappeared in January 1815, with local legends saying that he was murdered by sailors who cut up his body and buried it all around the island. Later, lighthouse keeper George Dernan was said to have dug up his jawbone. The lost spirit of Raid Muller is said to roam the island, but is most commonly haunting the tower. Coming into number 2, we have the urban legend of Tim Hortons spiking their coffee. Tim's is a Canadian institution, despite no longer actually being a Canadian-owned company. Everyone I know goes to Tim Hortons pretty regularly, and we all agree that it isn't even the greatest coffee, but something just keeps us coming back. Well, the urban legend has it that good old Tim is spiking his coffee with nicotine to make it more addictive. Some say that the brew is mixed with the drug, others say that the cups are sprayed with it so that nothing shows up when the coffee is tested from the source. The classic story seems to go that an American hops over the border to the friendly Great White North. They stay with their relatives and adopt their habit of having a Tim's every day. When they get back to the States, they have their blood tested for some kind of routine checkup, and actually it reveals that there's a significant amount of nicotine in their bloodstream. The urban legend has become so popular that Tim Hortons even released a statement to say, "There is in fact nothing added to our coffee. We believe that our guests are addicted to consistency." I actually really somewhat doubt that. Tim Hortons coffee is wildly inconsistent. You get a good cup, you can get a bad cup. Either way, our mate Michael McCrudden loves a good Tim Hortons. Finally, coming into number 1, we have one of the most famous Toronto stories ever. We have the legend of the Leaping Lawyer. The Leaping Lawyer of the TD Tower in Toronto's financial district has gone down as something of a morbid legend. Little did Gary Hoy know when he plunged to his death from the 24th story of the tower that he would win a slew of posthumous awards and accolades. The legend goes that a crazy banker accidentally fell to his death from the tower whilst playing a practical joke on a group of students, and actually that's pretty accurate. Hoy was a senior partner at Holden Day Wilson firm and he loved a good laugh. His party piece was testing the strength of skyscraper windows, and one day when a group of articling students were in the building, he hauled himself at a 24th floor glass window to prove how strong the glass was. The first time he played his party trick, all was well, but the second time, well, he was less fine. He fell to his death as the glass smashed. Not a great way to go. His death has gone down in history and was even included in the TV series 1000 Ways to Die. That really isn't a way that I'd like to die, to be honest with you. Nonetheless, his legend lives on. Okay, before I go, I just want to read some comments from a recent video I did about the top 10 scary deep web stories. I don't know how I feel about these scary lists. They do really freak me out, but nonetheless, I do them for you anyway. Our top comment was from Nif King Foxy, who said, "Don't go looking in the dark web. Please, I warned you." You're right. We shouldn't. You shouldn't. Just don't do it. Blueberry Pie Squad said, "I kinda believe the whole Marianas Trench thing. I don't really believe the Atlantis thing, but would actually maybe it might be true and real. Maybe somebody thought it was because they were crazy and they wrote it down. LeMayo." So a really sweet comment from one of our subscribers, so I just wanted to shout them out really quickly. Kitty Cat said, "Rebecca, I would just like you to know that you always make my life a lot better every time you host an episode. Thank you so much for everything you do, even though some of your videos scare me sometimes. Don't even worry, they scare me too, but we're in this together, so thank you, and thank you for watching." Thank you guys once again for tuning in to this episode of Most Amazing Top 10. I hope you liked our Toronto urban legends. Should we do a city near you? If so, let me know which city in the comment section down below. For now, I'm your host Rebecca Felgate. If you want to connect with me on social media, my links are in the description box. I would love it if you left a big thumbs up on this video, shared it with a friend, and join me next time.